Yeah, so technology played this game with me a couple of days ago while I was working on this presentation. But I must start with thanking all of you guys. I would also want to thank IDC, IIT Bombay, and my friends at Typo Day to have made this possible for me to come and share what I've been doing. As I stand here in front of such an august audience, I am standing here with very mixed feelings. Because yesterday I was a very, very proud teacher when in the first typo quiz conducted in India by Professor Uday Kumar, my students from NID won with a thumping margin. And today I feel very humbled in the presence of my own teachers from whom I have learned. Vikas is here, Mahendra Bhai, Sudarshan Bhai, and so many others. So a very good afternoon to you guys also, sir. I have been teaching at NID for the last almost 15 years. I have stopped counting it after I completed 10 years. But I basically spent my childhood in a very, very small town called Rourkela in the eastern coast of India, towards the eastern part of India, in the state of Orissa. And we just saw a wonderful presentation on Oriya script. But I live in the state of Amul milk, Amul Doodh, in Ahmedabad city, and I work at the National Institute of Design, where Gujarati is the script for the local language there, Gujarati. This particular piece of hand lettering was done none other by Dattaji, he is also here. But I basically belong to the wonderful state of Punjab, where the script is again very, very different, largely monolineal. As a father, I had no answer to a question which my son asked me when he was in his senior KG many, many years ago. He said, you do something with letters, you teach something about letters and alphabets to your students. आप बोलते हो कि English में there are 26 alphabets. But my teacher is asking me to write 52 different alphabets. Because 26 capital letters have different shapes and 26 small letters have different shapes. And I had no answer. So even though my past has introduced me to 3 different wonderful scripts, Oriya, Gujarati and Gurmukhi, but here today I am standing in front of you guys speaking in English. As a teacher, yes, that's something which I passionately managed to take time out. Handbook binding. I also teach drawing and illustration at NID for the BDES students. Publication design, both English, Hindi, Gujarati, as the situation demands. And I also teach typography. So that sort of sums the kind of work which I do. Not all the work is in front of the computer. A lot of work is based on how we make use of our hands. And I know some of you guys would say that even when we work with computers, we use our hands or fingers or thumbs when we are typing SMSs. But the kind of work which I meant when I am saying that I don't work with the computers is that I don't need to worry about power breakdowns, battery running off, or softwares sometimes playing nasty games with you. So today what I'm going to share with you is my experiences as a teacher, specifically when I'm looking at this whole broad domain called typography. This might sound like a repetition, but all of us, especially this particular audience, which is connected together with this beautiful subject called typography, but even for the layman, the non-designers, typography as an element is omnipresent. It's all around us. And often it is making our thoughts visible. I have some examples. So typography helps us when we pray. And trivia is that I managed to salvage this when my parents were shifting from a town in Hisar where they had lived for almost 25 years. And there was this whole box of documents which was meant to be thrown away. And I said, wait, let me see. And I found this. It is printed in Varanasi, and it dates from 1949 or something. Obviously, Gita Press, Gorakhpur. Typography also allows us to, sort of articulate or recapture our thoughts when we are hungry. And I would like to draw attention, especially of the students, to look at the kind of variety which are there in these images, variety of the typographic expression. Often when we are looking for our ways, often typography also informs us about something. That something could be which you are expected to do, or it could also be something which you are not supposed to do. Yeah? For those of you guys who can read Gujarati, wonderful. For those of you guys who are reading the English text, yeah. So after a point of time, it is the intent which matters, not the typeface, not the font. I don't know. Yeah, we receive a lot of information through devices which largely depend on type-based communication, whether it's newspapers or handheld devices. Often typographic messages also warn us. This is sort of a vandalized thing found in horse cars. So somebody has actually painted over the figure which was written as a jurmana or a fine. But typographic messages often helps us in emergency situations, to find a way out, whatever. Legal documents, yes, there has been this ongoing debate about a paperless future and things like that, but we still hold on to our printed pieces of papers, our identity cards, and so on and so forth. People who own houses, I can bet on it that all of you guys have gone through this kind of a printed agreement with your tenants if you have rented out your premises, or if you have taken a rented premises. So these kind of things will never happen on your iPad or on your Google Drive. Typographic messages often can also become life-saving components. Our relationship with typography often doesn't end there. Even when the mortal remains are taken care of, typographic records are still maintained. And this particular one has a personal story behind this. When my father passed away in 2012, and it's interesting because these record keepers have their own families and clans who they take care of. And I could find my family's records dating back to 1783, when they had come for the last rites from a place which is right now in Afghanistan. It's very interesting. So the written script has such a great degree of significance in our lives. Yes, of course, sometimes typographic expressions makes it difficult for us to figure out what is happening. Yeah. I don't know, from a distance it becomes a little easier to read. I think it's from our Indian Railways, it says something like, do not something. Yeah? So type and typography, often we talk about these two terms, very freely, intermixing them and things like that. I do not want to get into that debate because there are wise people, researchers, scholars who will help you guys with that. But what I'm trying to articulate is that typographic devices or any communication which largely depends on the written or the printed word, whether it is hand painted, whether it is printed using whichever technology, plays several different roles. Sometimes it is an expression, and we see a lot of examples out there in terms of some really beautiful posters. Often it is used as a tool or a mechanism to achieve clarity in the way the information is presented. But definitely, typographic images, if I may call them, and I'm very consciously calling them typographic images, because when I go to Bangalore, if something is not written in English, everything is like an image to me. And often I am found guilty of standing there, not attempting to figure out what is written there, but just getting lost and appreciating those beautiful letter forms. So typography definitely is a messenger of a particular message. Yeah? Another interesting story. This is very commonly found these days, and I'm sure in Bombay also you would find them in a couple of stationery shops and things like that. But in most tourist spots, we find these small nuggets and small little cubes with all different alphabets. And there are these people, there are these women. We came across this woman in Mount Abu on the border of Rajasthan and Gujarat who just asked your name, and she obviously cannot read English. This particular woman I am talking about. There might be others who are familiar with English. And all she expects you to lay down these little nuggets in the right sequence. And she'll quickly weave a name band for you. So sometimes, typography also goes beyond an expression or beyond a messenger or a device to achieve clarity. It just comes together as an artifact which just makes you feel good. Yeah? There are so many layers to it. Some of you guys make typography to be used as an identity. And we use that. When we fly, we get all these kind of tags and labels and identification of your baggage and all those kind of things. So coming back to the National Institute of Design, over there we don't teach typography. And I'm sure some of my students here would agree with that. We just help them learn. And that's quite a big challenge, especially in the last 15 or 18 years. Because when this whole digital technology came into our lives, the computers came in as a very, very fascinating toy. And especially in the academia, all of us were encouraged. Yeah, it's a new device, it's a new tool, explore, experiment. And suddenly, whole lot of expressions, whole lot of typographic expressions, whole lot of graphic designs started looking very similar, because almost everybody's explorations had the same kind of gradients, the same kind of drop shadows, the same kind of margins, things like that. So it is quite challenging for us as a teacher that yes, while computer and so many different softwares, we heard in the morning there was freehand, and then CorelDRAW had crept in, and there was a software called Ready, Set, Go, which some of my seniors would remember, basic layouting software. And then I started my life with computers with Aldus PageMaker 2.1. I won't get into the software things, but as a teacher it was very challenging because the computer was really, really, really fast. It is like comparing a tandoor to a microwave oven. But before I get into the debate of whether computer and softwares is good for graphic designers or typographers, yes, it is good in many ways, but there are also other good things which it has just hijacked and taken away from our lives. But before that, let me just share some glimpses of some of my students' work. This is a set of typographic expressions where the student called Khyati Trehan, she graduated last year from her undergraduate program. And as her classroom project before her graduation project, she said, I want to do something related to type and science or the scientific community together. So after a lot of iterations and exploring and bumping into dead ends and things like that, we finally settled onto a brief which said, okay, ABCD, that's it. But how can we introduce scientific information or something to do with science in it? So this is a set of 26 posters. At the moment they are digital. Hopefully if we get enough funding, we would want to print a whole lot of copies of this. So A is for Archimedes' invention of the water screw. B is for Boyle, discoveries of Boyle's law of ideal gases. So the whole typographic expression was that while you are still retaining the basic letter form as we recognize it in the Latin letter form, but can it be redrawn, re-illustrated, re-represented in a manner that it makes it easier to understand the basic premise of that scientific principle which it is talking about. So O is for Oliver Lawrence, invention of the cyclotron. T is obviously for Tesla, the rotating magnetic field. W is for Whitney, who has the credit of inventing the cotton gin. Y for Young, discovery of the wave particle duality. Jimi Hendrix, I don't know where he came in from here, but I think the message is very loud and clear. This was a 4-day assignment, and this particular set of work is done by a student called Stuti Mahadevan, who's currently doing her final project. And the challenge was to look at a content which is purely non-English and use English as a language and Latin as a script to express it or So what she did was she selected a couple of songs, popular songs from Bollywood film industry, and did layouts using the lyrics of those particular songs. So this one is sung by Muhammad Rafi, Sar Jo Tera Chakraye, followed by Ina Meena Dika. And there's a whole lot of other information in terms of trivia: who are the singers, who's written the lyrics, who's composed the music, and which were the actors on which this particular song was filmed, and the year. So needless to say, there is a certain structure. There is a certain method in the kind of freakiness which is obviously so apparent. There is a certain varying degree of contrast between different layers of information. In the same assignment, which went on for a week, another student, Naomi Kundu, she had a very interesting take, and the brief was to collect recipes of 10 different dishes which uses the potato as the basic ingredient, and then figure out the layout of how it can happen. Now, for some of us who are foodies and have a basic collection of recipe books at our home would recall that most recipe books are quite boring. The photographs are very interesting, tempting, and delicious looking photographs, but in terms of the hierarchy, in terms of the organization, almost every page looks like the previous page. And this particular girl added another dimension. She said, like we were talking about, multiculturalism in the morning and things like that. She said, my family, people are married with people, obviously, but people from different parts of the countries are married into my family. Yeah? So she said, okay, basic potato, but how do different people use potato in dishes which are so popular in their own state? So this particular one is Simi Auntie's Sunday Brunch Special, Papeta Per Idu. I think it's a Parsi dish. Yeah, a true Parsi delight. This one was a South Indian, Mr. Venkat Raman, potato pepper fry. And this one is a Bengali Shunando Dada, who is a techie and he's a programmer, and so everything is very structured and things like that. But across three layouts, besides the size being the same of every page, the treatment in terms of how choices of typographic decisions were made, that it is giving you a very subconscious connect to the kind of source or the kind of region or the kind of content which it may have. Simple Masi ki super top secret aloo paratha. Okay. So sometimes we have, carrying on with food, anybody can recognize what this is? You guys all have typography on your head. It's a paratha and green chili. Yeah? So you guys are seeing things which are not there, typographers. Okay. So what is this? Okay, A and P, I will take that. And it all comes together as Appytype. This was a weekend experiment done outside of the class by a group of students, Pragun, Jyoti, Antara and Hena, the spectacled girl. And they had fun. And eventually, there were very few people when they were working, but as the plates started getting laid down, the crowd increased because everybody was waiting. Ye kharab ho jane ke pehle kha lete hain. Sometimes official documents, serious looking things also need a lot of intervention. Actually, I must show you the other two first. These were redesign of the birth certificate and the death certificate, which is again a part of a classroom assignment. And what this student, Ishita Jain, tried to bring a certain correlationship between these three important documents in our lives, based on which whole lot of other documents are. Color, yes, the death certificate is purely black, which is the case even now. But the birth certificate, she had that, there could be a variety of colors which are pre-printed already with the municipal corporation or whatever, and you can pick. You can pick a blue one, you can pick a green one, or you can pick a pink one, or whichever one. But the information which is in black is digitally printed after the records are put in. And that led her to saying that the marriage certificate, why does it need to be a vertical format and in a single column thing? Because two people are coming together, and her solution was so simple that there are two columns, one for the bride and one for the bridegroom. Okay. Oh, there is more serious stuff. Yeah. School textbooks has been a major, what is it called? Pebble in the shoe. No. As graphic designers, as typographers, we are still struggling with the kind of textbooks which are being designed, which are being created by the government machinery, because those are the largest number of books which are circulated. Of course, there are private publishers which are doing some amazing work. I don't blame the people who are working on these textbooks because they have their own limitations. Yeah? So somewhere the decisions have to be taken at another level, but this is a student's work, and how she looked at organizing the information and using different kind of typefaces to create a certain hierarchy, not only a visual hierarchy, but also a sort of a fun element. These are glimpses from a project done by a student called Champsa Rimchan Dorje. He belongs to the northern part of India. He is himself a Ladakhi. And he ventured out to understand the Ladakhi scripts. Even though the spoken language may be largely similar in terms of the dialect with few variations, but in terms of the written script, there are 5 major scripts which are still prevalent. Some of them are on the verge of a gradual decline. So he went about analyzing these scripts and understanding the basic structure, what are the commonalities and all those kind of things, but eventually created a workbook which can be published and used in the schools where young children are taught the Tibetan language. Yeah? So these are some pages of. Another interesting type design project for the Wancho script. It apparently is an old tribal language of Arunachal Pradesh, but the script is fairly new. So to sum up the story so far, that when as designers, when we use type or typographic elements, it often is a very, very contextual decision. That how do you select a particular typeface? Should it be a serif? Should it be a sans serif? Should it be a script kind of a type? How big? How small? And often it is governed by the content. Yeah? Content is the king, or if you may prefer, the queen. And all this is done with the intent of communicating the message effectively. Now, as I was saying that when I started teaching, we were going through this transitory phase where computers and digital devices had just come in, and a whole lot of things were possible in very little time. And soon I realized that what the computer has given in terms of speed and in terms of explorations, in terms of variations, it has also taken away from us a certain ability to see all the explorations at the same time and reflect upon it and compare one with another, because the softwares show you one page after another page after another page. And in those days, often our students, we were also struggling with how to name your file, should you add another page. So often I found that students were doing incremental changes on the same layout. So when you have a discussion, acha, this is good, iske pehle wala jo kara tha wo dikhao, wo to hai nahi, because they have worked on the same layout. So I'm going to talk about 3 approaches which we now take at NID, use at NID to teach the basic vocabulary. I'm not going to read out all these things because the audience in this is pretty familiar with these terms and terminology. But what we really insist is that how do we create assignments where our students start developing a certain visual sensitivity. So this is like the first half an hour when the course starts, and we have these like playing cards, a whole deck of typographic cards, and they're all mixed up and jumbled up, and the students are expected to look at similar looking skeletons, similar looking weights, similar looking. So it's quite an interesting thing, because for a first timer, they really come up with very interesting observations. This particular L seems to be falling down, when they have a card of italics. And Eventually they are introduced to the classic typefaces, through this exercise. There are sessions where the students are expected to read, borrow from the net, discuss, understand, but essentially the presentations don't have any computer printouts, which basically means they have to look at whatever image they are seeing in the book or on the computer and redraw it. So that's another level. When they are copying it, they are actually sort of in their mind tracing the contours of the different typefaces or the different letter forms which they are using in their presentation. Choosing typefaces, yes, as I said, the context becomes very interesting, very influencing. So I'll quickly run through these some examples. So it's not just an exercise in choosing a particular typeface which is appropriate to represent that particular profession, but how within the frame are you placing these typographic elements. A similar exercise in choosing and using typefaces. This particular one was a series of postcards for the New Year's, and sometimes the way we say, or the kind of oral puns find their way into typographic expressions. So yes, this one uses din. Yeah, I won't name the typefaces. The third level of typographic assignments is how do we teach our students to create a certain emphasis or a hierarchy, because when we are communicating there are certain things which are important, more important than others. So if you have lesser time, you just pick up the headings, and in the morning E2 was also saying that in newspaper design, if you crack the headlines, a whole lot of things are taken care of. So this is an interesting example where the text is the same, but how your typographic decisions can actually create completely different layouts which could be emphasizing different things. Another extension of the same one. Now, for those of you guys who are not fallen asleep and are alert, you would have noticed that there are these very funny vertical lines, in the beginning of a sentence, or sometimes it appears in the middle of the sentence. No, this is not a software error, because these layouts have been painstakingly made by cutting strips of text and pasting them. So this is what our students go through. So they have a particular typeface and the copy in that particular typeface. They go down to the photocopy machine, they enlarge it, take photocopies in smaller sizes, and that really compels them to be doubly sure about their decision. Should I paste it here or should I paste it 2 mm above? It's a painful process, it's a slow process, but I am very convinced about this in terms of the kind of output which it gets, and the whole world is moving towards slow agriculture, slow food, people are slowing down. But what I am very sure about the fact is that when my students are using faster tools like computers to do the same thing, subconsciously or consciously they are very sure about their decisions. And of course then there is this visual perception thing that no, this particular word needs to be in still a lighter weight. It also helps them reflect very critically upon a series of variations which they have done, and then acquire the ability to take a judgment about which one works, which one doesn't work. So the same assignment is scanned and then digitized. So they use the handmade, hand cut, paste, drawn layout as a background layer and then recreate it and then refine their decisions using the faster tools of computers. So the second thing which we also very consciously have now started reworking on, because often in institutions there are certain administrative pressures. How many of you guys can use the computer to get such kind of a print? This is a thick 350 GSM paper which has a foil kind of a surface, and typography is done on it using an age-old method of relief printing called the letterpress. Now, when we take our students through this rigor of introducing them to the basic type terminology, not by making slide presentations, by making them stand in the print labs and look at, then the realization is there for a lifetime that why is the space between two lines of text called leading? Because they have actually taken that piece of lead in their hand and they have felt the weight and they have done hand composing together and they have understood why negative leading is not considered to be a pure form of typography. Yeah? Of course they have fun, but some of them get hooked onto it and they keep on coming back so often that they end up making their projects around the whole technique of letterpress printing and typography. A very famous poem by Robert Frost, "The Woods Are Dark and Deep," and this is a double impression letterpress printing. Yeah, and Mahendra Bhai would know, I've learned these tricks from Mahendra Bhai, that even though the furniture gives you only 90 degrees and slabs, but there are other devices, so in this particular one we had these triangles, if you see. Those are slats of wooden pieces which are cut exactly to that angle so that your type is in the desired position, and likewise the second impression. This is the second one. This is very interesting because it is a single impression. It is not about the number of colors or the ink, but it is also about the judgment of how far should one letter be from another letter. And this one, the ink was applied type by type, letter by letter. I know digital technology can never reproduce this, but this is printed in blue and silver. No computer printout will give you a silver ink. Yeah? So, I think that's about it. And it's my pleasure to also share with you that in 2014, the Government of India passed the NID Act, which allowed us to confer degrees. And what I'm going to share with you now is the first Bachelor's of Design and Masters of Design certificates, which have been designed by an NID student of graphic design as her classroom project and 100% printed in-house. And needless to say, we used all kinds of technology, including UV, screen, letterpress, foil stamping. Only the signatures are original. And in the background, very proudly, we wrote National Institute of Design and Rashtriya Design Sansthan in all the classified scripts of our country. So that's how it looks, and obviously Devanagari is more important. We are an Indian institute. So typography and a decision making that what can be done and what should you be doing can take you as far as you are willing to go with it. Concludingly, it's important what we say, but it's equally important how we say it, visually and typographically. Thank you.